Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Right, so we are finally getting towards the end of these class top 10 videos. We have done 4 classes already, so we have cosmic and mutant classes left to do, which are also arguably the strongest classes right now. And as always, standard disclaimer, these lists are meant to symbolize my point of view about the game. They should not be looked as some sort of hard facts or evidence. Fact of the matter is, we do not have any official statistics of the most popular champions or most used champions or champions with the highest success rate and things like that. Only Kabam has that information, not us. So everything that I'm about to say, obviously, is my opinion, my evaluation of the game, the way I see it right now. Now, to make it very clear, I am trying to insult your family's honor and intelligence. I am telling you which champions are good and which are bad. No, wait. That's not the one. I'm not trying to pick a fight with you and your family. The base idea is we all see game differently. Our personal valuations differ based on where we're at in the game, what are our gaming habits, what playstyles we like, what mastery setups we run, what content we have cleared most recently, and what content we're trying to clear. All that thing matters. And all that thing is, very valuable insight when it comes to deciding which champions are needed more right now and you should rank and so on and so forth. You should not be following these kind of lists, let alone take them as facts. Right, so let's move on to the Cosmic ranking. Cosmic is the biggest class. Also, Cosmic was one of the weakest classes just about 6 months ago. Last class ranking video, I wrote Cosmic the last, and it clearly shows. Because from a video 6 months ago, where I checked my personal rankings, nearly half of the champions that were on the list in top 10 Cosmic previously are not anymore. Because Cosmic has gotten a ton of help. Cosmic has gotten new champions like Hercules and Null. And, even more additions with Icarus. Now they have 6-star Hyperion, which wasn't included previously. And on top of that, there are reworks of Venom Pool. Odin got buffed. There is a rework of King Groot, which is, again, very influential. So there have been massive gains in Cosmic class, which largely is the reason why the class has effectively rocketed from one of the weakest ones to one of the strongest ones in the game within 6 months. And that just shows how much effect Kabam has and how much influence they have to kind of balance the meta in a very, very short amount of time. Actually, forgot to remove these things, so we're just going to get rid of that now. Right, so there are a ton of good Cosmic champions that unfortunately do not make the list, and some of them are even somewhat personal favorites of mine. Like, I still think Silver Surfer is a great champion that is not only prestige, he can provide an actual value, he can answer actual problems in the game. Top of that, obviously, Ronan is a niche champion, unique kind of utility champion, but he's still valuable champion to have. Then we have people who absolutely adore Proxima. This time, I believe Medusa, unfortunately, just did not make the cut. I'd place her probably in like 11th place at the moment. But that's still not top 10. And, Icarus still has kind of yet to prove himself. Carnage is one of my favorite champions. Calobsidian is, favorite of some people, and I can see why some people love the champion as much as they do. On top of all of that, this is the one list where I incorporated a little cheat mechanic. There is a tie for one spot. So this list is actually going to feature, 11 champions as is, and there is a very good reason for doing so, though. I did my best up until now to not have any kind of like split placements and things like that. But in this case, there's kind of a very good reason to do so. So I took the opportunity to do that. So we're going to start with the spot number 10. And spot number 10 is automatically already going to cause quite a lot of outrage because she does have quite a big fan following, and that is Angela. Angela has become significantly better after her update. And I think in previous list, I believe I ranked her at about 5th or 6th place, but my opinion of her has not decreased or increased. realistically. I still look at her more or less the way I looked before. I do have a rank 3 6-star Angela myself. Now, unfortunately, she's not quite the super high sig yet, but eventually she will be. But Angela is definitely a valuable champion. I personally absolutely love the fact that she, as she always had been, is still extremely liquid courage double-edge friendly. But on top of that, the small additions that they gave to Angela are a perfect example that there are champions that do not need much to make a major difference. And in Angela's case, well, she did get kind of like an OP ability where with 3 buffs active, which you can have naturally without any pre-fights, without any nodes, very easily, if I may add, she basically bypass all of damage over time effects. Now, obviously, there are caveats to that, but the fact that you can effectively substitute Angela for immunity champion in majority of the cases is very big for her. Then added to that, she can parry projectiles, she can also bypass auto block, and she now has armor break and obviously access to plenty of buffs, and with all of that, quite a lot of damage as well. Her damage isn't like otherworldly unless there are plenty of synergies and nodes involved, but her damage is still very, very solid even at her base. For those of you who are not quite sold or convinced about how good Angela is, I actually did a full-on Labyrinth of Legends run with my Angela as soon as I took her to rank 3, so perhaps you guys want to check that out. But yes, Angela is awesome. I can definitely see why a lot of people like her. I would be willing to debate her placement somewhere slightly higher, but this is also me being consistent with my previous rankings of the champions, of, the buff champions and new champions and things like that. And I think this is, very solid, sturdy placement. Again, I do not think any less of Angela as I did before. It's just that we have plenty of high caliber champions that have been added to the game. And that is where I see Angela. She does need super high sig though, unfortunately. Okay, so the next champion we need to talk about in spot number 9 is going to be Odin. And Odin, I think I kind of feel that I am talking about Odin like in every other video, because he was in the 2021 release champion video where I had to discuss him. He was in the 2021 buff video where I had to discuss him, and I'm discussing him now again. But to make it kind of relatively short and sweet, Odin has plenty of inherent value now. Thank God he got an update, and he has become extremely sturdy and extremely high damage output champion. He does not necessarily need to have that rest in between fights anymore. He has plenty of damage even without it. And his value lies, obviously, with the combined factor of him being just very sturdy, high damage output champion that has very good access to true strike, that you can maintain an entire fight extremely easily. Then on top of that, you have quite significantly increased power gain effects, and you can do a ton of damage. Obviously, he has access to plenty of buffs as well as a cosmic champion. And then there is the entire other side of Odin, where he can work as a wonderful synergy piece for other Asgardian champions. And perhaps most importantly, he has his pre-fight abilities that he can apply on any champion on the game. And in plenty of scenarios, just the facts alone that he can put buffs on champions is enough to make those champions significantly more powerful. Whether we're talking about Ghost Trinity with Ant-Man, whether we're talking about Green Goblin, who becomes significantly more potent, or Angela herself, and I'm sure there are going to be more and more champions that benefit from it, like Icarus, for instance. Icarus benefits from it quite a lot as well. You can make any champion almost shock immune. He can, apply protection, where you can't lose more than 15% of your maximum health from a single source. And then he can also increase the damage of the champions who rely on furies, armor ups, and precisions. So all of those are, relatively niche, but still somewhat useful abilities. But in majority of the cases, I think the fact itself that those are actual active buffs that are active at the beginning of the fight is kind of like the biggest benefit that Odin gives to a lot of champions. I think he's very stable champion that's reliable, and he's one of those champions that I recommend every player has access to. Because a lot of fights where you're missing that one piece, where you have a perfect counter to a difficult boss fight, but you need that shock immunity, for instance. Well, there you go. Or if you need just, I don't know, to deal with buffed up, you can automatically have any champion qualify for buffed up nodes just with the pre-fights alone. And Odin himself would be able to deal with them. So, yeah, there are definitely more than enough scenarios that make Odin an extremely valuable asset to come. And if you're going to bring him in for any of his synergies or abilities, it's obviously extremely nice to have him ramped up because he definitely is more than capable in his own right at the moment. Now in spot number 8, I'll be putting in CMM. Honestly, I could kind of perhaps debate the swap here with Angela. Perhaps I would put her in 10th and Angela in 8th. But this is about where I see CMM. I think CMM is still a very powerful champion. Nobody can deny the fact that she has dropped in her relevance significantly. CMM was at her peak when health pools were small enough for her to be able to nuke them down quickly. The longer the fight goes, often the trickier it is to play with Captain Marvel movie to maintain your binary charges, and you constantly have to parry and be able to land those heavy attacks, and that comes with a cost. That comes with the cost of playability of the character. Like, she absolutely 100% relies on you being able to stun the opponent, which is not end of the world, which is also a burst champion, and there are inherent downsides to her. That being said, she still has an absolute plethora of really useful abilities. Like when she enters binary, she removes all debuffs from her, and she can gain that indestructible. I have like a CMM review from when she, was a very new champion to the game, where I think the title was 12 Seconds of Glory, because that's how it quite literally feels. For 12 seconds, you can just deal with anything and everything. You're indestructible, deal a ton of damage, and you can just deal with so many threats. But again, that also kind of relied on her being able to close out the fight within those 12 seconds. So in her base, she's a cosmic champion with very frequent access to armor break that can come in use, access to up to 5 fury buffs, and then also access to power gain buffs. She can start the fight with extra power, which often is underrated and definitely super useful piece of utility. And I just kind of wish her binary charges lasted slightly longer, or were easier to maintain, I guess. And obviously she deals a ton of burst damage as well. I know definitely for a fact that she has a lot of fans, people who use her, and I respect that. She's not everybody's cup of tea, but nobody should ever say that she's not a good champion. Definitely still is a good champion. She still holds plenty of value. If you like her, you should not hesitate to rank up Captain Marvel movie. Right, let's move on to my cheat section here. This is going to be the bit where I cheated. For spot number 7, I'm placing in simultaneously Venom, and Venom has lost some ground as well. I believe previously placed him in second one. And Venom Pool. Both of them share spot number 7. And as I said, I'm going to have a good reason to do that. Like, there are obviously different champions, and there are fights that Venom can do better, and there are fights that Venom Pool can do better and Venom can't do. But in essence, I'd say for about 80 to 85% of the content, they are in fact interchangeable. They work for exactly the same variants, pretty much, except Venom Pool also can enter the latest variant, which is Deadpool Mercenary one. And in general, when you need one, you can pretty much always, or in majority of the cases, get by with either one. Now, Venom will have plenty of matchups where he has the upper hand in, like, shorter to moderate length fights and like Lion's Quest and things like that. And Venom Pool will have plenty of fights where he takes over from Venom if they are longer or if they fit specific criteria and things like that. But they are very similar in the fact that both of them can completely shut down Spider Hero's evades. Both of them can have access to a ton of buffs. can inflict debuffs, and so on and so forth. They are, in fact, very similar. I personally still value Venom higher. If this would be an individual placement, I would place Venom above Venom Pool right now. It might change in the future, and at the moment, it is actually shifting and changing. When Venom Pool got initially buffed, I think the gap was bigger, but due to, for instance, Variant 8, and due to Venom Pool being overall more suitable for more fights in map 8, I think the gap is closing, but still at this moment, I still place Venom slightly higher. But either way, fact of the matter is that you are probably fine with one of these two champions. You don't necessarily need both of them. And, you know, each one of them in most situations can replace the other. There are nuanced differences, obviously. But yes, more often than not, you can use either or. That's why I place them together. Because I do think that it is, again, very important that any kind of serious bigger account has at least one of these champions ranked up. You do not necessarily have to have both of them ranked up, but I do recommend that you have access to at least one of these two guys ranked up, because they do come in handy quite a whole lot. And spot number 6 now. Spot number 6, a champion that I kind of wanted sliding higher. I'm not gonna lie, spot number 6 is gonna be a champion that I definitely wanted sliding higher, and that is King Groot. King Groot is right now one of my absolute faves. He's so good. He is an absolute machine of destruction and regeneration. I use him a ton in Alliance Quest. That's one thing. But I also use him a ton for content. I use him plenty in 7.3. And he was one of my MVPs for 7.4 beta. When 7.4 beta was live, I explored all of 7.4, and King Groot was just putting in so much work. And in general, he's just fit and suitable for a ton of game modes. Now, ideally, you do want to have some SIG levels. I don't think it's necessary to have him at like SIG 200, but you do not, well, even at SIG 20, he has plenty of healing, but obviously the higher signature you get, the more healing he gets, the more impressive it kind of is. And he got a rework that works extremely well for him. He got much quicker ramp up if you need the armor breaks. That alone was like a very good change. His furies get more potent as the fight goes on, and you know, his special 2 has ton of burst damage, has a very potent poison that you are able to maintain up for a very long time if you have to, and still the level 3 with the regeneration. But basic idea, he's a bleed immune cosmic champion that can shrug off debuffs like crazy, gain a ton of fury buffs, regenerates a lot, can inflict plenty of debuffs on the opponent as well if need be, or can play without having a need to inflict the debuffs, and cannot be power controlled basically. And all of that combined just works. It just really, really does. You can ignore a ton of nodes. You can ignore all sorts of plagued mines and things like that. Or what is the name of the node where you swap power bars with your opponent? I have to deal with some of those fights in AQ Map 8 as well. He just ignores all of them. Anyhow, absolutely love the guy. I think he is such a great investment right now. And, you know, potentially maybe I should have placed him higher. But, you know, maybe that would be too biased. Still think he's very, very good. Also like the fact that you can easily run him with and without Liquid Courage Double Edge. Makes pretty much no difference, because if you run him without Liquid Courage Double Edge, you know, those Furies give you plenty of extra attack. He's not the hardest hitter, but, you know, there is not that big of a difference whether you're running Recall Masteries or not. And if you are running Liquid Courage Double Edge, then, you know, he has such a massive regeneration, plus the immunities, plus the fact that he shrugs off the other debuff as well. You can hardly notice that recoil, and you kind of heal back up to full every cycle anyways. Such a beast. Absolutely love him. For number 5, at the moment I'm placing Null. And with Null, people need to kind of bear with me. I am not personally convinced whether this is the right spot for him, because I have had very, very, very limited experience with him. Maybe he deserves a couple spots higher. Maybe he deserves a couple spots lower. This is the impression, more or less, that I have gotten when talking to people. And every single person who has Null, who has ranked Null, has been praising him to me, which is fair play. And I can understand why people would like him as much. He has a potential for great damage. He is a cosmic champion that does not rely on buffs. He can reduce opponents' power rate quite significantly and make the fights be a lot more aggressive and therefore more fun. He can access a ton of debuffs, and you know, he heals a ton from Liquid Courage Double Edge, therefore making him an excellent option for that. I will get Null sooner or later, you know, 100%, saving all my shards 5 and 6 star at the moment for next featured crystals and stuff like that. Eventually I will pull Null. Obviously I'll get more experience with him. At the moment, I'll be honest, this is an approximation of his ranking. If you're gonna tell me that I'm an idiot and I don't you know, value him high enough, I'm gonna be like, fine, maybe you're right. And if you're gonna tell me that I'm overrating Null, I'm also gonna be like, fine, maybe you're right. This is a genuine approximation based on other people's opinions and my conversations with more people. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but at the moment, this is where he sits. At the moment, this is where he sits. It would not be kind of fair for me to completely boot him off the list either. Right now, next champion, I have kind of love-hate, up and down relationship, and that's Korus. I like Korus a lot. I still think he has a ton of value. My valuation of this champion in particular, I think, has been most up and down. In one ranking list, I'm going to put him in 3rd or 4th. In the next ranking list, I'm going to put him in 1st or 2nd. And that's how it feels with Korus. Korus goes through these waves where he becomes more relevant and fades away, and becomes more relevant and fades away. And at the moment, I have absolutely no doubt that he still carries a ton of value for a ton of players. But for me personally, he has kind of faded away a bit because a lot of his duties have been taken by a different Cosmic Champion, or a mix of different Cosmic Champions. That being said, I do not think less of the champion. If you rank up Korus right now, he's still going to carry you through a crap ton of content. Lion's Quest, plenty of use of Korus in Act 6, and even Act 7 as well. I used Korus and he puts in plenty of work, so he definitely still has the value. The thing with Korus is that even though he still holds as much value as he does, it might be more convenient these days to have a different option for similar type of fights and use a different option for what you used to use Korus with. And that kind of thing happens when champions just kind of get, you know, outclassed by newer additions. Sometimes they do make a comeback for good reasons, sometimes they don't. And Korus has been battling that slide up and down for quite a while. A lot of that also obviously depends on the health pools that we're going up against. A lot of that depends on nodes. For instance, any node where we get those, you know, 100 or 200% attack increases, Korus is back on top again pretty much instantly. Like if we play against 4-set nodes and things like that, if you can get extra damage on Korus, it's up there. Like this month's KVQ, where we had to have like the Illuminati or Thanos Corpse or something like that in the final quest. When you could get extra Furies on Korus, he was like the best champion for that entire quest. Immediately, like that. Because he got extra damage. You could go in and with, I don't know, 2 charges, be doing 25-30k mediums instantly, right? Crazy. So, at the moment, I am going to be putting him in 4th place. And again, it could change. It's very hard for me to pinpoint a place for Korus at any given point in the meta. Because he's one of those champions that we're falling in and out of love 3 times a day. 5 on Sundays. That being said, however, I will add another caveat that at this point, I don't think I would be investing in Korus unless you have access to Liquid Courage Double Edge. A lot of people still keep asking whether it's worth ranking up and stuff like that. And I always answer, yes, 100% if you have access to Liquid Courage Double Edge. I do not think that he can compete without them. Previously, could be negotiable. Right now, don't really think so. Moving on. Spot number 3. Moving on, spot number 3. And I'm giving it CGR. Here we go. Yellow numbers police. Please leave me alone this time. I'm tired of fighting with you. Here we go. CGR goes up number 3. Now, there are reasons, there are objective reasons why my viewpoint of CGR has improved. I always thought of him as, like, you know, very good at what he does. But unfortunately, he didn't have that much content where you necessarily wanted to use him, or where he was the better option, or where you didn't have plenty of other options. Let's say it like that. He was one of those champions that you used him because you wanted to, not because you had to. And he was mainly used for the fights that plethora of other champions can do as well, for the simple fact that he does more damage faster. And that often is still the case. But the reason why my view on Korus, not Korus, CGR has improved is because he is compatible with map 8. And map 8 does have that infinite playability. So he is, you know, putting in work on daily basis for a ton of people. And it was one of the reasons why Korus was valued as high, and it sure shit can be a reason why CGR's stock goes up. On top of that, he has found himself useful in more stuff in 7.3, and again, he's not necessarily game-breaking champion for 7.3. You know, it's not like you use him for 10 out of 12 paths or something like that. But he had his uses, without a doubt. And that, combined with the fact that he's still seeing some or plenty of Alliance War play. I myself used him in Alliance Wars, like, I don't know, 3 wars out of 12, which is, you know, fairly significant. And the fact that he is very useful for plenty of stuff in map 8 now. I think he deserves his 3rd spot. If Cosmic Ghost Rider is the 3rd, who is the 2nd then? Well, the OG Cosmic King has returned, and I genuinely think Hyperion takes back a spot above CGR. The reason why I also like Hyperion more is just the fact that he's much less restricted in his playstyle. You can, and that's always been one of Cosmic Ghost Rider's downfalls, because he's a champion where you need to be able to finish your combos. He's a champion where you need to gain access to your buffs or debuffs, and not buffs and debuffs more specifically. And Hyperion, and the champion who's in the 1st spot, doesn't really have that weakness. With Hyperion, you can spam those heavy attacks, or if that's not possible, drop a level 3. You're gonna get your charges, and you can easily spam special attacks and deal damage through, like, either Incinerates or something else. The fact that Hyperion can be used very well with and without Liquid Courage Double Edge. Obviously, he's better without. And just the general versatility of the champion. No matter how much time passes, seemingly, none of that really hinders the guy. He is the champion that gains power in the game most effortlessly. He's a champion that can exclusively throw special attacks the entire fight, and you barely feel like you have to stall the fights. On top of that, obviously, he has a relatively good regeneration, access to tons of damage if you're able to land your heavy attacks, and especially going to your level 2 rotation, for instance. And just the matter of fact that he does indeed have one of the most versatile playstyles. He's also one of the most wanted champions for me personally right now in the game. Fortunately, I don't have him as a 6-star, but I'm very envious of people who have this guy already at 6-star rank 3 awakened. And that is where I put him back. We all know the reason he wasn't included in the last list. That was because in these lists, I do not include champions that are not out as 6-stars. And he is now. So he's back. And he's awesome. That's about it. He's just amazing. I think I might have understated how much value is in the fact that you can fully alter the way you use a champion. Whether you want to play with buff heavy style, where you go for heavy attacks, whether you drop full combos, whether you only drop level 1s or only drop level 2s, and then you can also basically make sure that you do not land pretty much any physical attacks the entire fight, because his level 1s are projectile energy attacks, all except the last one, so you can take down opponents like Electro and that type of sort of thing. Then obviously he can interact with Despair, and yeah, I don't know, he's just about close to a perfect Cosmic Champion, I think, as it gets. So who knows what's going to happen with him in the future. But I believe as more and more people obtain this guy as a 6-star, the more and more people are going to be raving about Hyperion again. And the first spot is easy. It's Hercules. Now, initially, I was definitely, again, relatively cautious when Hercules arrived in the game, because I like to be cautious rather than overhype and then, under-deliver. I don't want to be that guy who tells you that Strife is end-all, be-all, next Aegon, and then Strife falls off the map. I don't want to be the guy who tells you to go open every single Grandmaster Crystal for Proxima Midnight, and then 2 months later, you realize that Proxima is not really putting in work for you. And that's why, naturally, I'm much more cautious. I think it's much better served for everybody if you're initially cautious, and then once you have made sure that the champion actually is living up to their expectations, then you can give it your seal of approval and say, yeah, he's bloody amazing. And there were important things that I initially overlooked about Hercules as well. It wasn't the immortality. The immortality was always going to be useful, and it really is, especially because of his immortality being combined with being unblockable. You can just seemingly get in so much damage and have very high uptime of that immortality. You often have even enough time to bait out opponent's special attack or two and still keep that immortality and still keep pounding at the opponent. The main thing about Hercules, what makes him as good as he genuinely is right now, is the fact that he has very versatile playstyle. He's one of the very few champions similar to Hyperion where you're not locked into doing a specific thing. If you can't throw full combos, it's fine. You can do 3-hit combos and back out. If you can't throw heavy attacks, it's fine. You don't have to. If you can only do heavy attacks, it's fine. You can win fights only with heavy attacks. If you have nodes that limit your special attack use, it doesn't matter all that much. Yeah, you lose some damage, but you don't lose all that much damage. Definitely does not rely necessarily on special attacks, for instance, to deal a ton of damage. And all of those things combined make him arguably the easiest champion in the game to deliver a lot of damage very quickly, very early in the fight. And that is where his kind of true value lies, combined with all of the extra abilities. The fact that once you have had a few fights in a quest, you can enter a fight and just deal a ton of damage. And with that immortality, you can basically ignore a lot of damage over time abilities, because most of the fights you can actually finish with the duration of that immortality. And that's where we are in the game right now. Hercules is absolutely beasting pretty much every piece of content, I'd say, except Alliance War. He gets used some in Alliance War, but he has inherent weakness in Alliance War, which is Assassin's Mastery. So I have seen a lot of people try to rush in fights with Hercules and just get KO'd because immortality doesn't trigger or something else happens. And people still do have that mindset where you do want to constantly intercept and be like super aggressive, and people just need to calm down. You're going to ramp up that Hercules eventually. You don't need to land the intercepts every 2 seconds. But he's just a great champion, pretty much in every aspect. Immortality combined with a ton of damage that comes from 2 different sources, therefore you are fairly effective when it comes to bypassing like damage caps from a single source. On top of that, you can bypass miss and auto block reliably. You have access to plenty of buffs, whether precisions or cruelties. That level 3, I kind of wish it was better. Level 3 seems to be somewhat underwhelming, but I definitely am absolutely also in love with that Infuriate debuff that he can inflict on opponent, and that just makes it so much easier to manipulate the AI, and it just makes stubborn AI cooperate with you a lot more. The fact that he's Liquid Courage double edge friendly is obviously insane as well, because you can easily run him with and without Liquid Courage double edge. And then on top of it all, he also gets a random, fully functional, always active stun immunity, basically. And, it just fits together incredibly well to be super easy to use, extremely powerful champion. That's genuinely what he is. There are champions who can achieve higher damage with ramp up. There are champions who perhaps have more utility. For instance, you could make an argument that I know Kitty Pryde can do more, maybe, when synergized fully and stuff like that. And I have heard that argument plenty as well. But what gives Hercules as much value as there is to him is just how easy and fast he lands his damage. The fact that you can survive entire full duration fights purely on that immortality, and those 9 seconds turn into 20 something seconds, and during that time the fight is over, even if it's like Act 7. And on top of it all, you know, you can play him in whichever way you want, and you can do it from the very first hit of the fight, and you're just going to be nuking down opponents. That's why Hercules up at the very top. And I think that's it. I think we have discussed the cosmic list. So we have only mutants remaining after this. So mutant list is going to be coming out tomorrow. Obviously, there are more champions that I personally enjoy that were not in the list, like OG Thor. Still absolutely love the guy. Vision Arcus is quite cool. Terex is quite cool. But Cosmic Glass is absolutely massive as well, you know. Right, so that is my list. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about